All right, friends, it's time to start shading or adding value. Keeping in mind, again, we want to go from white to black and all those gray midtones. So I've got my cutouts from last week and I've outlined them. So that's where we want to be today to move forward. So I'm going to start with my shading in this corner for two reasons. There's no real detail. It's literally just this dark red and white. And if I start shading in here and go here, what's going to happen is my arm is going to smudge all my drawing in here. So I'm going to start here. Now, obviously I can look at this and I can see that the white is just going to stay white. I might want to take a ruler and clean up these lines a little bit, but really I'm going to use the side of my pencil to start shading. And I want to try to match now, although this is red, I can match the tone, right? It's going to be fairly dark. And I can use the side of my pencil and really it's just one shade, right? It's this red is kind of all the same all the way through here. So that's the very first thing, is that I'm going to shade the corner of this. Now don't stress too much. If you make a mistake, we can always go back and erase it. But I want to match kind of as much of what's my original tone here to that kind of dark gray so that it looks sort of similar. Okay, so I'm going to start there and then we'll come back and we'll work on the details in this section. Okay, great. So I'm done with this corner, but here's the thing. Have a look. You can see it's kind of sketchy, and that's just the nature of me using the side of my pencil to shade. And we want this to be as smooth and even as possible. So here's a couple of techniques. If you have a blending stump, and if you're a drawer, you'll know what that is. You can use that to blend. Now, I don't have that. So what I like to use is the tip of my finger. There's a little bit of natural oil in your hand, and I like to just sort of make little circles and kind of press and rub over the shaded areas. And you can see that it starts to smooth out the pencil and make it more smooth and more even. Now, if you don't like the feeling of this on your finger, you can use a piece of tissue wrapped around your finger and it will sort of do the same thing. So just sort of little circles and take a minute. Now, here's the thing. Look what that did to my drawing. You can see now what I've managed to do is get smeared pencil inside the areas that I want to be white. So the really easy way at the end to go back and fix that is to take an eraser and just clean up. And this works the same for adding highlights into your drawing, like if there's a spot that's supposed to be really white. So for example, when I look at this, when I go to draw this, I will probably go back at the end and erase the whitest spots and the highlights at the end, okay? But for now, I'm just gonna start by erasing in here, and then it will be time to move on to the larger spot, which is gonna be a little bit more challenging. Alrighty, so now I'm ready to do the kind of more tricky part. Now, some advice is when I'm drawing, I like to start with the darkest spots first and then work lighter. Although you can do whatever you like, I find it easier to identify. So for example, the background is going to be the same as what I did up here. And then I can look at it and see, okay, where else do I have dark pockets? Because then I can go in with the side of my pencil and again, and just start to kind of, because I know those are going to be the darkest spots. So I can sort of go in and start to pencil those in. And I find it a little bit easier. Now, do however you find is the easiest. But like I said, I like to start with the darkest areas and then I can get lighter and lighter and lighter as I'm going along. So I'm going to go ahead right now and start to pencil in some of the some of the darkest areas. And again, not pressing too hard, but starting there. And then at the end, I can go in and of course use my eraser to pull out the really light spots, like here, the little highlights. You can see on my drawing some of the whitest areas. Okay, so I'm going to go do that and come back in a minute. Okie dokie. So I've got most of the really dark areas kind of blocked in, and I know it doesn't look like much yet, but we got to trust the process. It will come together. So the next step is now I'm going to move slightly lighter. Something interesting about my picture is there's no real white areas. Like here, there was white. Here, not really, maybe a little bit here and here. So the whole thing, my whole drawing is going to be different shades of gray, right? Even the lightest areas, so the bun and the sauce in here, they're still going to be gray. They're just going to be a lot lighter. So the next thing for me to do now is to start to add the different shades of gray. And then similar to up here, I'm going to blend them together. And then I'll be ready to add the finishing touches at the end, which will be erasing the highlights and maybe redarkening any really black areas. So that's what I will work on now, and I'll come back at the end.